Hello, my name is Jill Lindquist, and I am Vice President of Breast Milk for Babies, which is the nonprofit organization that has been working very hard to get a milk bank, a human milk bank here in Minnesota. So I'd like to start by saying that it really all begins with our moms, and it continues to benefit all the babies in Minnesota. I would like to say also that I have nothing to disclose. I am a international board certified lactation consultant. I work at Methodist Hospital at the Breastfeeding Center. And like I said, I'm Vice President of Breast Milk for Babies. So we have a very high need for the use of donor milk right here in Minnesota. Over 5,000 babies are born prematurely or critically ill in Minnesota every year. So donor milk is also needed for a variety of medical conditions and concerns as well. We have the critically ill and premature, as we mentioned, but we also have some feeding intolerances, some weight loss, absence or insufficient lactation at certain times throughout the process, and an illness of a mother, perhaps that's requiring a temporary interruption in the breastfeeding process. And then we also have these wonderful moms who produce extra milk. Now they are usually they're currently breastfeeding their own babies, which are thriving, and the mom has an ample milk supply. At that point, a mom will contact a milk bank and begin the process of donation. There is a screening process for potential donors, and it's actually pretty extensive. In fact, they're screened more closely than blood donation. So we have a phone interview by the milk bank to see if that mom is even a candidate or not. Then they also have a written interview that outlines details of their diet and their health history, and their physician also does sign off on this. And the third step is mother's blood is then tested at a memorial bank, and they are testing for HIV, HTVL1/2, syphilis. And so then when those test results come back and mother is cleared, she is now able to become a donor. So here we have a mom, an actual donor, after she has passed her checkpoints and she becomes an official donor. And as you can see here, they're very proud and they're very happy to become donors, and they are oftentimes, the moms are, where their babies has been a recipient of use of donor milk at one point, and they're wanting to give back. Here's some more of our generous donors. As you can see here, they bring it by the bags full. So they just call a milk depot, and they just say that they'd like to bring their milk and make a deposit. And as you can see, they just come, we need some trays to put these on so that we can get it up to the milk depot. So these are actual milk donors and lactation consultants that are helping facilitate this process. And we'd like to just call this out. This mom is one of our top donors, and she herself has donated over 6,000 ounces of milk. And she actually has had a second baby in the meantime, and she is a donating mom with this second baby as well. So we are just thrilled to have these mothers that can help us out. And there is a just common bond between strangers. We have two dads. So the dad in the car was dropping off milk from his wife that had extra, and then the dad standing up was receiving some milk and purchasing some milk for his newborn son, as he needed a bridge until his wife could make a full milk supply. But here they just happened to meet at the drop-off site and the pickup site, and here we have that common bond between strangers. It is such a community event. So currently, Minnesota has 5 milk depots. So a depot is where you can drop off milk once they are an approved donor. You see we have North Memorial Hospital in Robbinsdale, Methodist Hospital in St. Louis Park, Alexandria Clinic, so it doesn't have to be a hospital, so that's in Alexandria. We have Hudson Hospital in Hudson, of course, and then our latest one, newest one to open, was at the Government Center in Isanti. that was a very fun one. So we thought we'd give you just a look into some photos from an actual milk depot. As you can see, they need a freezer, and in that freezer needs to be temp tracked, meaning that they have to know what the temperature is at all times, and a way to notify somebody if that temperature becomes out of range. And then the moms will just bring those bags full of milk, and you can see here we have all kinds of milk coming into our milk depots. And the next step, once our freezers are full, we are working at this point in conjunction with the Mother's Milk Bank of Iowa. And they are, we contact them when our freezers are full, and they come get a big Suburban, and they drive around and collect all the milk, and they bring it back to Iowa for pasteurization and processing and getting ready for distribution. So as you can see, we have quite a process that goes on to get the milk to these little babies. Milk is currently pooled, and it's usually 3 to 5 donors that are pooled together. The milk is tested, it is then pasteurized, and then it is retested for bacteria, and then it is prepared for shipping and distribution to other hospitals and other facilities. And again, here is a snapshot of some photos of actual milk banks and what goes on in the process. So we've got the raw milk labeled in the walk-in freezers that's ready to be pooled. We've got the technicians pooling the milk from our 3 to 5 moms, and they're also capping that and getting it ready for the actual pasteurization process. And as you can see, once they're capped and they're ready, then it is pasteurized, and then we have the batch that's ready for its final testing before it hits distribution. So there is a trail of milk. So the milk is dropped off at the depot, the milk bank picks up the milk is gently pasteurized and tested, and then it is shipped on dry ice overnight. So what we would like to see here in Minnesota is the more milk depots that we have, that will be our feeder program for the Minnesota Milk Bank, and they will then switch over from providing milk to Iowa to providing milk for Minnesota. So the more depots we have and the more far spread these depots are located, the more we can tap into milk that would otherwise go unused.
My name is Evelyn Lindholm. I'm a lactation consultant, international board certified, and I work at North Memorial Hospital in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. The question, and I am also the president of a milk bank, working for a milk bank to be here in Minnesota. And why does Minnesota need a milk bank? One of the biggest things too is that we look at is that the shipping, how it gets complicated with shipping the milk out of the state. Right now we have depots at the milk drop-off sites where they ship all the milk out state. Shipping means packing the frozen milk to be sent out overnight to milk banks in Ohio, Chicago, or Denver. The Iowa Milk Bank drives the Suburban to Minneapolis and then back. Each shipment can cost up to $250 for this transportation. Then hospitals in turn buys the pasteurized milk to be shipped back frozen on dry ice overnight. The cost to a hospital can be as high as $300 to have the milk sent by plane for overnight delivery. Greatly reducing shipping costs will help to reduce costs for hospitals and families here in Minnesota. Shipments have been held up due to weather. We had one flight coming from Iowa that they were flying the milk up for us, and it got shipped over to Kentucky instead because of the weather. It was warm weather at that time, and it took 2 days for that shipment to come through from the bad weather, and that shipment was actually lost. A lot of the milk was thawed. We had another case last Christmas where the milk was coming from Chicago, and there was a snowstorm, and as the plane was getting here, they were held up for a while, but then it was too late to deliver it to the hospital. We knew that the milk was here in town, and we were only 10 minutes away, but because of the procedures with the shipping company, we were not able to get it. That milk was okay. It was in the middle of the winter, and so we didn't lose that milk. But it sure makes it to be complicated with bringing the milk into the hospitals here in Minnesota. Milk banks can run low on milk, and they're not always able to fill the orders for the preterm babies. And then when they're low, they can't get their orders filled, then the hospitals have to go looking at other banks to complete their order. In 2012 was when Denver had a lot of fires, and that's when we became aware that when we had ordered milk that there wasn't enough milk for them to be sent up here to Minnesota for our own hospital. And that was our red flag that we needed to be getting a milk bank here in Minnesota. Then this last summer in 2017, there was the flooding in Texas and Florida, and then there were fires in California. And there was definitely a lower amount of milk available for the whole country. So hospitals, when they called to order, but they had to find the milk in other places. And in 2014 is when we started our own depot here in Minnesota, the first one for being in the hospital. And since that time, we've shipped out over 250,000 ounces out of state. And here, the mothers of Minnesota, they're wanting to keep the milk here, and the mothers are wanting to keep the milk here in Minnesota too, and they donate. And we have enough milk here. We have plenty of milk in Minnesota that can be meeting the needs here in the state, and it probably could help other states afterwards too. But they want to know that their babies are helping them. Their milk is helping the babies right here. So Minnesota will become the 27th milk bank to help meet the needs of donor milk in North America. We're the nonprofit organization of Minnesota that we're called the Minnesota Milk Bank for Babies. We started out as the breast milk for babies, and we've been doing a lot of work to help educate here in the state of Minnesota. We have 3 points for our mission statement. First is to educate about breastfeeding. Second is to educate and encourage the use of human donor milk. And the last is to fundraise to bring a milk bank to Minnesota. Before we began, there were 4 hospitals using donor milk. Now there are 26 and counting. So there are a lot of hospitals coming on board in Minnesota who are giving the donor milk, and those little babies are benefiting. And we've been busy spreading the word. We have over 35 endorsements from a variety of medical professions and organizations. We've attended at more than 15 conferences, and we've presented at the Perinatal Hospital Summit and Minnesota Breastfeeding Coalition annual conferences. And where are we now? We're ready to keep donated milk to stay in Minnesota. We're ready to lease the site for the Minnesota Milk Bank. We're ordering equipment. We're furnishing the office space and hiring a director. Do you want to help babies in Minnesota? We're asking for your help to get the milk bank up and running. And how can you help? First, by becoming a milk depot. In whatever area you are living in, a depot is a place where the moms can have a convenient place to drop off their milk. Have your hospital, you make sure they're using donor milk to support the families who are breastfeeding in your community. Network with your colleagues to spread the word about donor milk and a Minnesota milk bank. And then also provide financial support. We have a GoFundMe site for breast milk for babies in Minnesota, our website, or mail us a check. We need help to get the milk bank up and running. And the cost that we will be having with the milk bank getting started is that the pasteurizers are around $8,000, refrigerators $2,000, freezers that are upright $3,000 each, and a walk-in is $8,000. Ice machine is $2,000. A dishwasher, restaurant grade, is $4,000. Computers are $1,500, and packing supplies $1,500 for us to get started. Once we get the equipment, we will be sustaining ourselves with the program of the milk bank. So once we get our initial up and running costs accomplished, then we can open the doors and and be able to get milk out to the hospitals here in Minnesota. So together we can make this happen. Thank you for all of your help, and thank you for listening to this webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us through our website.